The grocery store was quiet that morning. People pushed shopping carts, picked apples, and stood in line. No one expected anything strange. No one looked twice at the tall, quiet black man picking up a loaf of bread and a carton of milk. His name was Elijah Walker. He wore simple clothes, faded jeans, an old coat, and a cap pulled low. He didn't talk to anyone. He just walked calmly down the aisle, like a man used to being invisible. But then, everything changed. A loud voice shouted, "Get down on the ground." Now, people froze. A baby started crying. Shoppers dropped their baskets. Two white police officers rushed in, guns drawn, eyes wide, faces full of fake anger, hands where we can see them. One officer screamed. Elijah turned slowly. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just raised his hands. "Sir, there's been a mistake," he said, his voice calm. But they didn't listen. One officer slammed him to the floor. The other twisted his arms and handcuffed him so hard his wrists bled. "He's got drugs in his bag," one of them yelled. The crowd watched in shock. Some pulled out phones and started recording. A young woman asked, "What did he do?" The cop snapped, "This man is a threat. Stay back." Elijah said nothing more. He only whispered to the officer, "You have no idea what you're doing." The officer laughed and shoved him toward the door. In the police car, Elijah sat in the back seat. His face had a bruise. His lips were bleeding, but his eyes were steady. The officer looked at him through the mirror. "You're going down for a long time, Walker." Elijah didn't reply. He just closed his eyes. And for a moment, he smiled. The first courtroom hearing. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, and people from the grocery store were all there. Everyone wanted to see the man who was called a dangerous criminal on the news. Elijah sat in silence at the defense table. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His hands were cuffed. His face was calm. The judge looked bored. The two white police officers walked in wearing suits and proud smiles. They told the judge Elijah had stolen money, illegal weapons, and fake IDs in his apartment. They showed pictures, documents, and evidence found in a black duffel bag. One officer said, "We've been watching him for months." The crowd whispered. Some people shook their heads. Elijah didn't react. He just stared ahead, like he was listening to music no one else could hear. The reporter, who noticed. At the back of the courtroom sat a young black woman named Maya Brooks. She worked for a small newspaper. Most people didn't take her seriously, but Maya was sharp, and she had seen a lot of cases like this. Still, something about Elijah felt different. He wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broken like other men she had seen in court. He looked like he was waiting for something. Maya leaned to the lawyer beside her. "Has anyone looked into this guy's past?" The lawyer shrugged. "There's nothing there. No job, no family, no records. It's like he didn't exist before 5 years ago." Maya narrowed her eyes. That didn't make sense. Nobody just appears out of nowhere. After the hearing, as Elijah was being taken out, a little boy waved at him. Elijah smiled at the child. One of the officers shoved him harder than needed. "Don't smile. You'll be smiling in prison." But again, Elijah just looked at him. This time, with eyes full of something. Not fear, not hate, but knowledge. Like he knew something they didn't. And then softly, he said, "You should have done your homework." Back at the police station, the officers laughed in their office. "This guy is going down easy," one of them said. "No family, no lawyer, no record. We plant the stuff, say a few words in court, and boom, life sentence." They high-fived each other. But outside their office, Maya stood in the hallway, holding a recorder. She didn't hear everything, but she heard enough. Her heart beat fast. Something about Elijah's arrest was very, very wrong. And now she was going to find out why. The sun was setting outside the city courthouse. Inside, Maya Brooks sat at her desk, staring at her laptop screen. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, but she didn't type. She had just returned from the courtroom. Elijah Walker's face still played in her mind. Calm, quiet, confident. Too confident for a man who had just been framed. Maya had been a reporter for 6 years. She had seen scared men cry, scream, or beg. Elijah did none of that. He simply waited, like someone who knew something big was coming. That night, Maya decided to find out the truth. She clicked open her database and typed in Elijah Walker. Nothing. No high school records. No job records. No license. No tax filings. No past. It was like the man didn't exist. She tried again. Still nothing. Then something strange happened. Her screen blinked. A warning flashed. Unauthorized search. Access blocked. Her heart jumped. This never happened before, not for normal people. Something was off. The woman in the parking lot. Maya left her office late. The parking lot was dark. She walked quickly to her car, checking behind her shoulder. Just as she unlocked the door, a voice spoke behind her. "You're asking questions you shouldn't." She spun around. A woman stood near a dark SUV. She wore a gray suit, glasses, and had a cold look in her eyes. "Who are you?" Maya asked. The woman held up a badge. It didn't say police. It didn't say FBI. It just said, Classified Division, Clearance, Level 9. "You searched Elijah Walker," the woman said. "We saw it." Maya's hands shook. "Is he dangerous?" The woman didn't answer. She just said, "Walk away, Miss Brooks, for your safety." Then she turned and disappeared into the night. Elijah in his cell, back at the police station. Elijah sat on a hard bench inside his cold cell. He looked tired, but still calm. The officer on duty watched him through the bars. "You think you're smart, don't you?" The officer said, "Well, guess what? Nobody's coming to save you." Elijah looked up and smiled just a little. "I don't need saving," he said. "I'm just waiting for the door to open." The officer frowned. "What does that mean?" But Elijah said nothing more. He just leaned back and closed his eyes. The lawyer with secrets. The next morning, Maya went to visit Elijah's public defender, Mr. Jared Collins. He looked nervous as she entered the office. "I have questions about your client," Maya said. Jared sighed. "You and me both. I've never seen a case like this." "Something is wrong," she said. "His file is locked. I got a warning message just searching his name." Jared leaned in, whispering, "Let me tell you what I did find." He pulled out a piece of paper. It was half burnt, wrinkled, and very old. "There's a scanned note here," he said. "Just one. From 12 years ago." Maya read it slowly. "Elijah Walker, Operation Phoenix. Status: burned. Do not engage. Classified." "Burned?" Maya whispered. "What does that mean?" Jared looked scared. "It means he used to work for them. Probably high level. But now, he's off the books. Dead to the system." Maya's mouth went dry. Elijah was not just a normal man. He was someone powerful, someone the government wanted to forget. A name from the past. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She stared at her wall, thinking about the words in that note. Operation Phoenix. She typed it into an old military site she had used before. Nothing came up, at first. But then, in a deep archive, she found a match. Operation Phoenix. Black Ops Mission. Unknown location. Unknown purpose. 5 agents, 4 dead, 1 missing. The missing agent's picture was dark and blurry. But Maya knew that face. It was Elijah. She whispered to herself. They tried to erase him. A ghost visits the police station. The next day, something strange happened at the police station. The main computer system went black. Every camera, every phone line, every lock system, off. The officers panicked. Some shouted. Others grabbed radios that didn't work. Then, Elijah's cell door clicked open. He stood up, stretched, and walked to the door. But instead of running, he sat back down and waited. When the officers got the system running again, they were shocked to see him still inside. "You could have escaped," one shouted. Elijah smiled. "I told you," he said. "I'm just waiting." Maya makes a choice. Maya stood at a crossroads. She had proof. She had a trail. She could walk away and protect herself. Or she could publish the story. She looked at her computer screen and whispered, "They need to know who he really is." She hit send. And across the country, the truth began to wake up. The morning after Maya's story went live, the internet caught fire. Thousands of people shared it. Was Elijah Walker a CIA agent? Did the police frame a national hero? Operation Phoenix, the mission that never happened. People demanded answers. Journalists called the courthouse. TV trucks lined the streets, and outside the jail, protesters began to gather. Inside, Elijah sat quietly in his cell. He watched the news from a small screen. He said nothing. But for the first time since his arrest, he looked angry. The court scrambles. Judge Harold Beck was furious. He slammed the morning paper onto his desk. His hands trembled. "Who gave that girl access?" he shouted. His assistant, Mr. Conway, looked nervous. "Sir, we don't know. But the case is all over social media. People are watching now." The judge paced the room, red-faced. This man was supposed to disappear. Now the world is treating him like a hero. Conway swallowed hard. "There's more," he said. "The story says Elijah led a team called Shadow Unit. The government called them ghosts. They went into places no one else could." Judge Beck froze. "How does she know that name?" An old friend comes forward. Later that day, Maya received a message. No name, just a time and address. She thought for a moment, then grabbed her bag and left. She met the man in a quiet park. He wore a hat low over his face and had a cane, though he moved like a soldier. "You wrote the story," he said. "You told the world about Phoenix." Maya nodded. "Who are you?" He slowly looked up. "I'm the last one left. Elijah saved me. Twice." Maya's eyes widened. "You were part of the team." He nodded. "Elijah was the best of us. Brave, loyal, smart. He gave up everything to protect this country. And how do they repay him?" He said, his voice shaking. "They erased him. The deal that changed everything." Back at the station, Elijah was called into a private room. Detective Howard sat across from him, holding a thin file. "You've got people talking," he said. "Even folks in Washington are watching." Elijah stayed silent. "You know what I think?" Howard said, leaning forward. "I think you've been holding back." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "I think you could have escaped that cell. I think you let us catch you." Elijah smiled faintly. "I wanted to see how far you'd go to bury the truth." Howard opened the file. Inside were grainy photos. Men in uniforms, dusty villages, blood on the ground. One photo showed Elijah pulling a wounded child out of rubble. "You were a hero," Howard said. "Why hide that?" Elijah's smile faded. "Because heroes don't break rules. And I did, to save lives. They erased me for it." The hidden camera. Back in court, Judge Beck made a bold move. He called a secret meeting. No press, no audience, just lawyers and guards. Elijah stood silently as the judge looked him over. "You think you're clever," Beck said, "but I've buried men like you before." Elijah didn't move. But what the judge didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maya had planted a hidden camera inside the courtroom wall before the hearing. Everything he said, every threat, every lie, was being recorded. Live. Truth goes viral. Within minutes, the hidden footage hit the internet. Judge Beck threatening Elijah, talking about secret missions, admitting that Elijah was meant to disappear. People around the country exploded in anger. Free Elijah now. Expose the corruption. Our government betrayed its own. Marches started in major cities. Veterans spoke up. Even retired CIA agents began posting hints and clues about Operation Phoenix. Elijah's name was no longer hidden. It was everywhere. They come for Maya. That night, Maya was packing her things when her power went out. Then, a knock on the door. 3 men in suits stood outside. No names, no smiles. "You need to come with us," one said. She backed away. Suddenly, a 4th man stepped into the hallway behind them. Tall, broad shoulders, quiet. It was Elijah's old teammate, the one from the park. He didn't speak. He just lifted his coat and showed something on his hip. A badge. Not a regular one. A special operations shield, glowing faintly in the dark. The men froze, then left without another word. The old soldier looked at Maya. "You've got guts, kid, but now you're in it. Deep." Elijah's decision. Inside his cell, Elijah stared at the wall. He knew what was coming. The system would fight to survive. Lies would get louder. Danger would grow. But this time, he wasn't alone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a tiny piece of paper, the last message from his old team. "If it ever goes bad, call us back." He lit it on fire, dropped the ashes to the ground, and whispered, "It's time." The city was waking up, but something felt different. Police radios buzzed with panic. Streets near the courthouse were blocked. Reporters rushed in with cameras ready. No one knew what was coming. But deep inside the courthouse, Elijah Walker stood waiting. He wasn't in handcuffs this time. He had traded the orange jumpsuit for a plain black suit, clean, sharp, and serious. His eyes calm, but dangerous. He looked like someone you didn't want to fight. The courtroom turns cold. Judge Beck sat nervously on the bench. He had planned to delay the trial. Say Elijah was unstable, push everything into silence again. But then, the doors opened, and 5 men walked in. No one recognized them at first. They were quiet, dressed like normal people, but their eyes told a different story. They had seen war. They had survived hell. And now, they were back. Each one took a seat behind Elijah. One whispered, "We've got your back, sir." Judge Beck's face turned pale. He knew those men, and he knew what they were capable of. Flashback. The secret team. 10 years ago, there was a mission called Operation Phoenix. A team of 6 soldiers, handpicked from the best, was sent into a war zone the government didn't want to admit existed. Their orders were simple. Get in. Stop a massacre. Get out. No backup. No news. No witnesses. They weren't just soldiers. They were shadows. And Elijah Walker led them. He had saved villages, protected kids, and even risked his life to stop a missile from hitting an entire school. But one day, Elijah broke a rule. He refused an order to leave civilians behind. And for that, they erased him. Back in the present, Elijah stood as his lawyer began to speak. But then the judge slammed his gavel. "I've had enough," Beck shouted. "This man is dangerous. He is not what he claims to be." The courtroom grew tense. Suddenly, one of the men behind Elijah stood up. He took something from his coat, a metal badge, old and marked with a classified seal. "I served under Elijah Walker," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I watched him carry wounded children. I saw him take bullets for people who didn't even speak his language. Ask your files," he added. "Ask the Pentagon." Judge Beck's mouth dropped. He knew this wasn't just a man defending his friend. This was a witness, a soldier, a hero. Outside the courthouse, Maya stood with the crowd outside. People were holding signs. Free Elijah. Our hero, not a criminal. We see you now. TV news stations were streaming the event live. Social media exploded with hashtags. And then, just before noon, a black SUV pulled up. An older man stepped out in a navy blue coat. He walked with a straight back and sharp steps. People gasped. It was the former director of CIA operations. He didn't speak to reporters. He walked straight into the courthouse. The truth cannot hide. Back in the courtroom, the CIA director asked to speak. Judge Beck tried to stop him. But the man pulled out a sealed file and handed it to the court. Inside were pages of secret missions, photos, coordinates, witness names, a full record of Elijah's service. Everything that had been erased now sat in front of the world. Elijah had saved 243 lives. He had led 7 deep cover missions. He had even uncovered a terrorist plot on American soil, one that Beck himself once tried to cover up. The courtroom gasped. Judge Beck looked like he would faint. Elijah speaks. For the first time since his arrest, Elijah stood and looked straight at the judge. You tried to erase me, he said, his voice calm. You used my silence against me. You thought no one would ever know. He turned to the crowd. But truth doesn't die. It waits. And when it comes back, it comes with fire. Then he turned back to Beck. I am not just a black man who walked into your courtroom. I am the man who kept your city safe while you slept. The room went silent. Even the guards looked away, ashamed. The arrest no one expected. Suddenly, 2 federal agents walked in. Judge Harold Beck, one said, you are under investigation for obstruction, false charges, and conspiracy to hide government records. Beck stood frozen. No, this is my courtroom. But the agents walked up calmly and took him by the arms. This was your courtroom, they said. And just like that, he was let out. The country watches. Across the nation, people cried as they watched Elijah walk out of the courthouse. Free. Veterans saluted. Families clapped. Even kids in schools asked, can a hero look like him? Elijah didn't wave or smile. He just walked forward, his team behind him, head high, shoulders straight, because the fight wasn't over yet. The truth had been shown, but justice had one more chapter to write. The sky over the city was quiet. No sirens, no protests, just silence. A silence that comes after the truth explodes. Elijah Walker stood in front of the Capitol building, wearing the same black suit he wore in court. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He had spent weeks traveling from city to city, telling his story, showing proof. And now, the world was watching. This was not just about him anymore. The speech that shook the nation. A large crowd stood in front of Elijah. Thousands of people, young and old, black and white, rich and poor. Some held flags, some held signs, but everyone held their breath. Elijah stepped to the mic. He looked up, and then, with a deep breath, he spoke. They put chains on me in court, but I wore chains long before that. Not on my hands, but on my truth, on my past. I was told to keep quiet, to hide. But silence is a prison too. He looked at the cameras. They framed me, not just because I'm a soldier, not just because I'm black, but because they feared what I knew. They feared the day I would speak. People in the crowd wiped their eyes. Flashbacks, hidden sacrifice. While Elijah spoke, news channels showed clips. A young Elijah in army uniform, carrying a child through a war zone. A letter from a village elder calling him the angel who came at night. Documents showing missions that saved hundreds, but were buried deep to protect politics. Now, all exposed. The system begins to crack. As Elijah finished his speech, phones buzzed everywhere. Breaking any audios. 3 officers resign. DOJ opens federal case against corrupt judges. President requests meeting with Elijah Walker. The same system that tried to bury Elijah was now begging to talk. The crowd began to chant, "Elijah, Elijah." He raised one hand, and the crowd went silent. "Don't just chant my name," he said softly. "Stand up for the voiceless. Speak up for those still trapped. Fight for those who can't fight back." A quiet moment. Later that evening, Elijah sat at a small park bench. Maya sat beside him. She held his hand. "You changed everything," she said. He looked up at the sky. "No," he replied. "The truth did." A small boy walked up with his mother. "Are you the hero from TV?" he asked. Elijah smiled. "I'm just someone who finally stopped being silent." The boy hugged him, and for the first time in a long time, Elijah's eyes filled with tears.